This is nice. Get a little back thing going on. I mean, I don't feel real good, but I'm okay. Come on, dude, this music sucks. This is awesome. Come on, I can't hear you. Make some noise. There's our dog and my wife. Yeah, I can lead the Cupid shuffle. Get your butt lower to the ground. Spread your legs a little further apart, bobbing their heads. All right, how about now let's go to the wedding party. You have a really great steak. The problem is you just served it to the Amish at Best Buy. Oh, I see what I did right there. Yep. I didn't get a name wrong. So you got a name wrong. I didn't get a name wrong. You never had them at the beginning.
Welcome to episode 23 of DJ Center Stage TV. I'm Jim Collins. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, right now, in a few seconds, I'll be starting my show talking with our guest of honor, our VIP. So if you would please just look right at the video on your iPhone or your device. You'll see him right on your screen. Here he is. Let's put our hands together for it and have a nice round of applause by clapping your hands. Welcome Randy Bartlett to the show. Randy, how you doing?
I was doing great till about a minute and a half ago when you started the standard DJ introduction. But then they go, but he's got such a great voice.
He's got this magnificent voice. Listen to it. Let's jump right into the 1% solution. What is the 1% solution?
The 1% solution, the concept is really simple. It's changing what we do in very small increments. That's 1%. Maybe we're doing a 10%, maybe 1%, but a very small increment to get a completely different result. So we're trying to get a referral instead of a compliment. We're trying to get dancing instead of bobbing their heads. We're trying to get tears or eye rolls. If you're 5'2", tone it down a little bit. You take my breath away. You suck the life out of me. If you're 6'7", it's kind of the same thing, but it gets a different result. When I'm with you, time just seems to stand still. Or, man, your face could stop a clock. It's kind of the same thing, but a different result. So that's what we're trying to do. So the misconception is I think we see two things with the misconception. The first is that we're trying to do things 1% better. And the second is that I'm trying to get people to do things the way I do them. And in our workshops, especially, if we get 10 people to come up and perform, one of the first things we always talk about is, listen, Jim, I'm going to tell you something completely different than what I'm going to tell the next person. I might tell you that you need to be more animated. I might tell the next person, tone it down a little bit because you're, and it can be a simple thing. If you're 6'7", I'm going to say stand a little further away from the guest. You're intimidating. If you're 5'2", get out there closer. If you are my age, you're 60 years old, you better do everything you can to try to look a little younger because you look tall. If you're 22, you better try to look a little older. You don't have any credibility yet. So all of those things, come into play, and it's what we're trying to do is to ultimately get a result. So when I critique people, we call it critiquing to results. So you don't see a lot in my critiques of saying, "Oh, you said It's go to Toastmasters to learn that sort of stuff. We're trying to go, yeah, but saying isn't going to stop anybody from cheering. What will stop them from cheering is not giving them a reason and an opportunity to cheer. So I would work on that. And you're not supposed to say right? You don't need me for that. It's a daunting experience for a lot of people because two things are happening. They're just being critiqued. Forget who it's by. You're just being critiqued.
Yeah.
You got to be brave to do that. When you're being critiqued and watched in front of a bunch of your peers.
Right.
That's really hard. You're doing it in a really difficult situation. If you're at a wedding in front of 150 people, which is an easier wedding to do, 150 guests or 20. I mean, it's much easier to get the results you want with a bigger guest. So we are in a ballroom on a Tuesday morning in front of 12 of your peers, not a real wedding, and now you're going to do wedding party introductions. It's daunting, to say the least.
It's a different dynamic, and I could even think back to playing in a band when I first started playing in the band. We would have our friend musicians show up, and they would all stand in the front row as we're performing, hands crossed like
right,
and critiquing you. So it's a completely different feel and dynamic to have your friends there who do the same thing as you, and then to be in front of a live audience of friends and family at a wedding or reception.
But, if you were playing baseball and you wanted to get better, you would go to practice, you'd have coaches watching you and critiquing you. Mm-hmm. And the coaches would say, listen, you need to get your glove down a little sooner, get your butt lower to the ground, spread your legs a little further apart. They give you all these, get forward on your toes a little bit. They would give you all these critiques. And again, if you think about, if you're playing third base and you have the right position, but your weight is back on your heels versus on your toes, it's a completely different result. It's the difference of I could get to that ground ball to my left, or I couldn't get to it. It's a base hit or it's an out. It's a completely different result. But if you've never had a coach and all you know is you've got really good hands and you're pretty good and the stuff you get to, you make the play and people go, wow, you're a really good third baseman. Then you go through life thinking you're a really good third baseman. But somebody eventually comes along and goes, try this, get up on your toes a little bit. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, now, are you going to get to 1,000 more? No, the one you barely missed is now the one you barely get. But the difference is an out versus a base hit. That's the difference between a win and a loss. So apply that same thing what we do in the DJ world, and it's the same thing. It's I can give you little tips and ideas so that instead of guests going, oh, this is nice, now they're going, this is awesome. And instead of this is awesome, they're on their feet doing it. And instead of being on their feet doing it, they're on their feet and cheering. So we just keep going up and getting a different result. So it's daunting and it's hard. But for some reason, we're so wrapped up in our ego here as DJs. And there's a lot of DJs who've said, I would never let you critique me. Like, okay, well, let somebody else critique you then. But get somebody who knows how to critique. Most DJs don't know how to critique. They go and they go, the guy says, well, here's what I would have done. And you go, okay, well, how would that have gotten me a different result? I get it. I shouldn't have said, but what? I wish I had your voice. I don't have your voice. So, if I'm, again, doing the baseball analogy, if I don't have a great arm, does that mean I can't play the outfield? No, it means I better learn how to get rid of the ball quickly. And it means I better learn how to be accurate with my throw. What would you rather have? An outfielder with a great arm who always misses the cutoff man, who always throws to the wrong base, or somebody with a weaker arm but who's dead on accurate and always throws to the right place? I'll take that guy because over the course of the season, he'll get me more outs.
That's a good point. So let's say I've done a good job applying a 1% solution to effectively transition from couple's first dance into dinner, or introducing the father-daughter dance. The bride and groom have cut the cake, the anniversary dance is over, and now the dancing has started and continues all the way up to that grand finale. You have that time where the dancing is underway. Do you think guests would be like, okay, I know what happens from this point. I've seen this before. I'm going to say my goodbyes. How can you apply the 1% solution to an event to ensure guests stay the entire time?
The answer to every question that is framed that way is always going backwards. So whenever the question is, what do you do when? I almost always go backwards. I answered a question this morning on the 1% group the same way. It's always, people go, what do you do when? And we go, let's fix it before we ever get to that point. So how do we make sure that they don't leave because they've seen all this? You have to make sure they're at a wedding where everything they see is new and different and creative, and it's not the same thing they've seen a million times. So they don't dare leave. I have a lot of guests who stay at our receptions who never dance. I'm not a magical DJ. I probably get more dancing than most DJs because I work on my objective is not to get them to dance to the song, but to get them to dance to the moment. Mm-hmm. They're dancing because they can't help it, because there's just so much excitement going on. But I also get some guests who never ever dance, but they stay. Why? Because there's always something cool, creative, interesting that's happening along the way. And then beyond that, there are some real specific things. We have a 10 o'clock in time. I'm looking out there, it's 9:15, and we've got, a small wedding. Let's say we've got 100 guests that were at this wedding. And, now it's 9 o'clock, 9:15, and I can see we're about to lose 20 people. You can see that, right? I mean, groups kind of go, when they go, they kind of go in bunches, and you can see that.
When they're standing talking at their table,
right?
Even okay, that's like,
you can see it; it's coming. Yeah. So then I walk over there off the microphone and I say, "Hey, it looks like you guys are getting ready to leave. Are you leaving soon?" And they say, "Yeah, we're just getting ready to take off." I go, "Stick around for a few minutes. We have a finale planned that you are not going to want to miss, and I know that Jim and Susie absolutely want you to be here for it. So it's just coming up in a few minutes. Stick around." Mm-hmm. And then I have all the chief DJ tricks. When I play my last, I say things that sound like it's going to be the last dance, but that's not really what I said. I will say, "This is our very last fast set of the night, so let's bring all the energy out." And what they heard is the last, but I said the last fast set. Now this is when mixing skills come into play, right? So you can't have gaps between the songs. You've got to mix really well at this point. So maybe you can do 10 or 12 minutes worth of, that's 9:15, but now we're at 9:30. And then I would say, this is going to be the last slow couples dance of the evening. And again, they hear last song. Right. So everybody comes out for that one, right? But that brings us, so now it's 9:35. Now it brings us into the finale. Now the finale for me is going to be a couple of different things, but I'm probably going to do my slow with the voiceovers and do all the stuff that we do at the end, which by the time I get that done, it's probably 9:42. I'm coming out of that with a super high energy dance song to blow it all up. So we're probably now at 9:50. So maybe I stopped the reception the 10 minutes early, but that gives me 10 minutes of what I call traveling music, that I can play some traveling music. It's not just lights on, go home, and they can hug guests. So those guests who are going to leave at 9:15 are now there at 10 o'clock. And they participated in an ending like they've never seen before.
I love that. That's great. That's great. Your DVDs are awesome. I looked into finding out about Peter Mary from The Best Wedding Reception Ever, and then from there looked into some of his DVDs, and then of course he talked about you in his, and then I'm like, oh, who's this Randy guy? Cool. So I picked up the 1% Solution and checked them all out, and I think like anything you learn from, it's important to apply what you learn to make it your own. Do you think many DJs fall into the trap of copying the examples you give in the DVDs, like verbatim, and only take it there and don't do anything else with it?
Yeah, because we do it for good reason, because all we get are compliments. And you think about what happens at a real event, at a real wedding. So you get, let's say at a real wedding, 125, 150 guests, you're probably going to have maybe 15 people that will come over and say something to you directly at some point, right? And it's going to range from, wow, you probably hear all the time, you have a great voice, right? Nobody says that to me. Although, amazingly enough, I shouldn't say, some people actually do say that. But people also say, wow, you're a really good dancer. I'm a horrible dancer. But I've memorized some dance moves, and I'm enthusiastic. And sometimes if I'm out there doing something, I can lead the Cupid Shuffle. Let's be realistic. That's not the hardest dance in the world to do, right? So they say, wow, that was really good, this was really good. And then somewhere along the line, somebody comes up and goes, come on, dude, this music sucks, right? And we dismiss that person out of hand. We go, oh, they're drunk, they're stupid, they're an idiot, they're a jerk. We ignore that. I love when I hear DJs say, I've never gotten a complaint. I say, you're such a liar. If you've never gotten a complaint, you've never worked. Like, come on. We've all faced that. We have 200 people losing their minds on the dance floor. We're at, it's the old, what's the movie? I'm blanking on, Goes to 11.
Oh, yeah, Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap, yeah. So, right, we're at 11. We're at full 11, and somebody comes over and goes, man, don't you have any good music? So, look, we've all had that. But we dismiss that person, and we shouldn't, right? We ought to listen to that person. And everybody thinks it's great, but one person says it's too loud. Well, it doesn't mean they're right, but it also doesn't mean they're wrong.
Right.
And maybe what you need to do is walk out there where they're at. And I always say, where are you sitting? And then I walk over to where they're at. And sometimes it's too loud, and sometimes they're too old. And I'm not going to adjust it for one person, but I'm also not going to dismiss it when we do that. And we can get different results. Again, it's always about getting a different result. So the answer to your question is, we get so many compliments, and we get told so frequently that we're great. But to me, the ultimate one is this: when they say you're great, it means nothing. When you go to make your mortgage payment this month, write on the mortgage payment, I don't have any money, but I'm really great. I'm an awesome DJ. Write all that and see how far that gets you, right? It has no monetary value. But when they say you're great and I want you to be my DJ, I just got an email. You probably saw this because I shared it on our Facebook group. It was funny. I got an email maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago, and the email said, Randy was my DJ in 2009. The wedding was amazing. The marriage, not so much. I'm getting remarried in October, and I would love to talk to Randy about my wedding. When I called her, she said, so what dates do you have available? Because I want to make sure I schedule a date that you're available. At this point in my career, I would say probably between a third and half of the weddings that I book are booked around my availability. And that does not happen because they read a good review on Wedding Wire.
Right.
Because, again, everybody has this. And they're good to have. The wedding, listen, there's a guy here locally who, just thinks his Wedding Wire reviews are the greatest. And they are. And he thinks and he disagrees with me. And I go, no, I don't disagree that they're important. They're important. But why do you think yours are any better than anybody else's? Go read them all. And I think mine are way better than his. His say the same thing. His always say, Jim was a really nice guy who played all of our music and our friends danced and we had a great time. And you read the next one, it's like, Jim was a really great guy, returned our phone calls promptly and played all our songs for us.
Right, and I think couples are overwhelmed too when they're looking into entertainment and they're reading reviews because they're all the same company to company to company.
Yep.
It's the same type of thing. Dance floor was packed all night and accommodated our music and had an amazing time. Friends and family keep talking about how great it was, but
everybody said it was the best wedding they've ever been to. What else are your guests going to say?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, Jim, thanks for inviting me to your wedding, but frankly, this sucker is boring. And we're going to go home. I know it's only 8 o'clock, and I know you really wanted all of us to be here to celebrate, but I'm not staying. That's never going to happen. They go, hey, listen, we got to go. We have the kids back home, and then later you go, wait, they don't have kids.
Well, that's magical. Just to have someone contact you and work their schedule around yours to hire you for their wedding, and then looking back at someone who is in a position where they're getting remarried, and by association thinking of you during that time with this person that didn't work out, hiring you again after the fact.
Right. The first time that ever happened for me, it was really funny. We were a bigger company back then, many, many years ago. We used to be a pretty good sized company. And the first time that ever happened, I said to the bride, if you want, I can give you one of our other DJs so that it's, not me showing up there again. Cause it was pretty recent. I'd been maybe like 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And I will never forget her response. She goes, Randy, you weren't the problem. Okay, I'm there.
Folks, if you have Randy's 1% Solution DVDs, I encourage you to ask to join Randy's 1% Solution Facebook group as well. It's a very positive group where members will support one another and offer suggestions to improve performance. Then you can hear how beyond the DVDs, like we were just mentioning, the 1% Solution is applied in many other ways. Randy, has your group become what you hoped it would when you created it?
It's more than I thought. I envisioned when I did it that we would probably have 200 or 300 people that would participate. I think we're at about 1,300 members now. I'm trying to think how long it's been around, 3 or 4 years. We just don't have the drama that you have on other boards. It just doesn't happen. I've removed maybe 5 or 6 people ever from our board, and all except most of them were because somebody slipped through who was really an advertiser. Mm-hmm. Who, you have to get approved, and I would approve them, and then all of a sudden there'd be a big ad for Chinese lights or something, and we're no drama place. I don't say that I remove them. I just remove them. It's just gone. It's no big deal. I think I've removed one person ever who was just, trying to turn this into a typical Facebook group. We just don't do that. We don't argue about whether this stuff works because it works. There's no point in arguing. We can debate different ways to do things, but the concept of whether or not it works, that's science that is decided. And so now we just put, I love the group. And listen, I get some great ideas. One of the guys in our group, we were talking a while back, one of the things I meant to do forever was to create a really cool handout about toasting, about how to do toasts. And somebody on there, and I mentioned it, and they said, I have one, and he gave me the one he had, and it didn't really work for me, but it was the impetus to create my own. And I took, maybe 20% of what he did and then changed most of it. But without that, I wouldn't have made mine. And it's completely changed the results that we get from our toasts, handing out our toasting tips now. So we share things like that on there all the time. The people that are on there are a very supportive group because almost all of them have been that other guy. They've been the guy that was the $400 DJ who was I get it all the time. People come to my workshops and go, I had no idea what I was doing wrong. Everybody told me I was great. But then afterwards, I talked to them and were like, wow, what a difference. We did the workshop on Tuesday. I went to a wedding on Saturday. Every time I spoke, people cheered and screamed, and I never told them to clap. I didn't even know that was possible. So that's where it all comes from, and I loved it. You and I've talked about. I love workshops. I mean, I've been to Peter Mary's, I've been to Mark Farrell's. I've been to if there's anybody who's been to more DJ conventions than me as an attendee, I don't know who it would be. There's maybe more that have gone as vendors who go to every single one, but I attend every workshop and every convention.
Your group is awesome because I like, there's a couple examples of just people who start off in the group and get some ideas, and I'm sure they're attending workshops in addition, but it's interesting to see their transformation I'm wondering what I should do with this idea. How do I introduce the first dance so everybody is engaged? And to hear about their stories of how they apply the 1% solution and grow and to see that progression, that's what I really like out of it. And also not alone that, but just hearing how you can apply the 1% to make it unique in other ways that you never even dreamed of before, and see how creative people get.
We've done a lot of things with, it's come up a couple of times recently of, so somebody recently passed away and they want me to do a moment of silence or a special song and so we go, okay, so how do we do that? We want to give them what but the way, there's a phrase we use a lot, and that is that I work with our clients instead of for our clients. And the mistake that most people make is that they're trying to do customer service. So their intentions are good, but they go, well, that's what, like the one that makes me the craziest, I see this all the time, people say, how should I do fill in the blank? And invariably DJs will just ask the client what they want. Not saying that you shouldn't find out what the client wants, but they're not qualified to do this. When I used to do a lot of bar mitzvahs, and it was really funny. I used to have this, I discovered with my Jewish clients, you had to be really direct. Like subtle didn't work with them. So it was a great lesson because what I learned there then applied to all of my non-Jewish events. But I had to learn to be really direct. And so every once in a while we'd get the one, the mom would say, just let Joshua pick all the music. And I would say, it's a horrible idea. Now I would say it different to a wedding, right? But I would go, that's a horrible idea. And she'd say, but it's his party. I go, let me paint you this picture. Let's say you came to hire me, and I charged a lot for bar mitzvahs. So you're paying me $4,000. And Jim, what if I said to you, listen, here's what I'm going to do. In terms of music programming, I have this 13-year-old kid. Now, he's never done this before, but he really likes music. I'm going to let him program all the music for you. Would you be filled with confidence that this party was going to be great? Or would you go, maybe having somebody who's never done this before do it all, it might not be the right thing. So, but the same thing applies. So we get all the time where people say, I've created a timeline. Good for you. Let's take a look at that and see what it is. But that doesn't mean I'm going with that timeline. Doesn't mean I'm rejecting it either. It just means that I'm going to work with you. And when somebody says, I'd like to do a moment of silence. And I've shown this, I have this one video I've shown many times where the DJ does the moment of silence for the dad, and it's the wrong dad. I mean, it's like there's so many things wrong with it, but he literally does a moment of silence for a father who passed away 6 months ago, but there's so many things wrong with this. And he bows his head. You don't see him on the video, but I know got from the video, bows his head. All right, how about now let's go to the wedding party. Oh, and the next thing is, and he goes right, like, wow, and it feels like enough of the dead guy.
Yeah.
But I'm sure what happened was that couple said, we want you to do a moment of silence for the dad.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. But it's not, yeah, so it's just the wrong thing to do. That's what you see on there a lot, is that people say, my client wants me to do this. And you're on there enough to know, frequently what I do is go back to the client, talk to them again, talk them out of that. That's a horrible idea. That's not the best way. They only know from their limited experience, and they've never done this. That's why I hate planners so much. I hate wedding planners because they, for a million reasons, but one of they have no entertainment experience, and they try to make entertainment decisions. But they go, I've been to a lot of weddings. Like, I've been to a lot of weddings, but I would never go to the photographer and tell him what settings to use on his camera. I just would never do that. Like, just because I've seen a wedding photographer doesn't mean I'm qualified to do wedding photography. So I wouldn't make that decision. So when somebody without entertainment experience makes entertainment-based decisions, then I take that with a grain of salt. And we do that a lot in the 1% solution. There's a lot of, I don't pull punches, as you know. I mean, I don't think I'm a jerk. Maybe I am, but I mean, but I'm direct.
Yeah, that's good though. I mean, then people are going to get the constructive feedback they're looking for. They know you're going to give them the honest truth of how you feel about it and how you can help them make it better, which is ultimately what you want to do. But backing up to that what you were mentioning about the DJ, the moment of silence and everything, there was an actual scenario where I was really having a hard time trying to incorporate that in to a wedding I was doing. And I actually posed that question in the 1%. And you got back to me like, here's an idea and here's how you can do it. And then boom, like 5 seconds later, there's a video of you doing that. It's like, oh my God. And you had footage of that showing exactly how you did it in a way that was polished, and it didn't take the emotion away where everyone's just like, oh, I'm sad about everything, and went right into the introductions. It was perfect.
The 1% solution DVDs came to be is going back to the very beginning when I did my first couple of seminars, and I'm a real visual guy. And so I brought some video clips. I mean, and again, this is in the mid-90s, so it was really tough to do back then. But I would bring video clips to my seminars, and I would show it, because talking about it is one thing.
Yeah.
Right? Seeing it is an entirely different thing. And that's the problem. People try to get training on Facebook, but when you're writing it out, you're not hearing the inflection, the timing. It's not the same as a workshop. It's a whole different world. And so I would show video, and then after the seminars, people would come up and go, can I get that video? I would love to have that video. And that's how it came to be. And so I used more and more video. And then I went what if, I mean, I did this for several years. I think the original 1% solution came out in 2002. So it's probably a good 5 or 6 years of using video in seminars. And then I went, and there literally was nothing out there available for DJs to get that was like this. There was Bobby Morgenstein had put out a really awesome set of VHS tapes on how to be a bar mitzvah DJ, which I spent $400 on, and people were like, "Oh my God, $400!" Like, you know how many times I made my money back from that $400 investment?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I went to Bobby afterwards and said, I would like to see something like this on weddings, but he was like, "I'm not going to do weddings. Weddings aren't my thing." And so I thought, well, maybe I'll try to do this. But at that time, I had a fairly, I mean, it was 2002. I knew a lot. I had been in business for about 15 years, so I knew quite a bit. But I don't know that I was really yet qualified to see the depth that it could be. But I put it out, and it was a crapshoot. I mean, I spent about $10,000 producing this thing, and I remember my wife saying, "You think anybody's going to buy this?" I'm like, "I don't know. I mean, this could be a $10,000 gamble that we never recoup." But I looked at it from, if I was a DJ, I would buy this.
Yeah, but I'm sure you're coming up with the idea. You're really excited about putting it out there and getting the information out.
Oh yeah, and when we put it out, there were a couple of VHS tapes that were out that were horrible. I mean, just really off. The content and the quality were both awful. But I still own them. I mean, if there was anything out there, I bought it, and it was just awful stuff. And we put it out, and we were so proud of the quality of it. And then a couple of years ago, I remade Volume 1 because the quality, I realized, had changed. It was so bad. I was like, oh, we were actually proud of this back, but it was 2002.
That's the thing. You could keep going back. You'll look at things and you say, "Oh, I could have done this." Now that it's a couple years later, and it's kind of like a musician standpoint too with a song. A song is never finished, right? And
right.
You could
right.
do it years later and say, "Oh, no, I want to go back and change it this way now, and maybe add a chorus here and change the verse or the melody or something." So it's the same thing, I think, in concept. You can incorporate updated ideas or different ways of doing it. So
I think that's a brilliant point, Jim, because what happens is, so first off, times change, and so music changes, and what's popular out there changes. We change. I don't think I should be doing this. I shouldn't be the same performer at 60 as I was at 30. Right? Things change. So all of that, and tastes change, music change. So yeah, you have to adapt. But there's a line I use a lot, which is, I talk to DJs who said, "I've done 1,000 weddings," and I always laugh at them. I go, "Have you done 1,000 weddings, or have you done one wedding 1,000 times?" Yeah. And I watch. There's a DJ here in Sacramento, and we have a video company, so I probably have at least 4 or 5 videos of him at weddings, and it's the exact same wedding. It's the exact same phrase. It's the exact same inflection. And what's interesting is watching him do the exact same thing with completely different style of bride and groom, and watching the difference of how it works really well once and it bombs the next time. And he would just go, "It's a bad crowd." It's like, but the analogy you always use is, you have a really great steak, but the problem is you just served it to a vegetarian. So it doesn't matter how good the steak is. You better find out if they eat beef before you serve them that steak.
That's a great analogy. Backing up to how you redid Volume 1. We have it right here. The redo. Let's see, got it right there. And here's the other one. So kind of like A New Hope with Star Wars. Which movie do you start with? A New Hope first, and go Empire and Return of the Jedi, and then go to 1, 2, and 3, or do you start with 1, 2, and 3? So I know there's a certain format as far as the order of watching these. So what do you recommend for people that have these as the best order to do that?
If people have not seen them at all and they buy the entire set from me, I have a little thing that I send out to them. And so here's the suggestion that I do. If you've not seen them at all, you start with Volume 3, which is the seminars. And the first thing you watch is the original 1% Solution seminar that I delivered in 2002, I think, and you watch that live seminar first. Then you go to volume 1 and you watch all of volume 1. You take some notes. I don't spend a whole lot of time on it, but you just go through, you take some notes. You'll go back and do it later in more detail. Then from there, you go back to volume 3 and you watch the second seminar, which is being a master of ceremonies. And you do that. Then you go watch volume 2, which is weddings and master of ceremonies. Volume 2 is a 2 DVD set. So it's everything about a wedding. And there's also a separate DVD on there, another live seminar that we did. So you watch that one. After that, if you were really doing it right, I would then go back to number 1 and start doing number 1, looking for very specific ideas that you're going to integrate, practice, rehearse, and put into play, and not try to do too much. I tell a story. The first thing I ever saw in DJ training was Bob Lindquist, who founded Mobile Beat, right? He came out with a book in the, I think, late 80s called Spinnin'. Here's how good I am.
Nice.
All my stuff.
Yep.
Spinning. Look, even have my little bookmarks in. Spinning. And this was a look at I don't know if you'll be able to see. Look at the style of print of this thing. It's really old.
Yeah.
So what I did, the mistake I made was I read this book and I went, oh, this is great. And so I went to a wedding and I tried to integrate like 20 different ideas, and I screwed up the wedding. I didn't practice. I was trying too many new things. And so a DJ with a closed mind would probably go, those ideas don't work. And instead what I did is I flashed back. I used to do a lot of stand-up comedy, and I learned a lot of how to tweak ideas there. And I realized that the ideas needed tweaking from me. So then I went back and I did fewer and fewer of them. But there's a line in the book somewhere that says, it's probably one of the parts I have marked, where it says, talking about, you can earn as much as $25 to $50 an hour doing this. Anyway, back to your question. So I would go those, and then, volume 2 is the sexy one. That's weddings. So everybody does weddings. They want to go right to, it's tons and tons of creative ideas. So everybody wants to go right to that, but it's sort of like saying, I really need to learn math. I'm going to start with algebra. You probably should start with basic math and work your way up. Right. And then volume 4 is actually my favorite, although I look the worst in it, so I don't like that. But volume 4 is behind the scenes. We put a microphone on me, and we had a camera follow me around behind the scenes at real weddings. Yeah. And you hear and see everything I do. So when I'm talking to the best man about his toast, the caterer, the photographer, the parents, the guests who are at their tables, the conversation we talked about earlier, like how do you get people to stay at a wedding, right? And you talk about all of those conversations, you hear the actual real conversations. And that's how I learn. I'm like, yeah, but how do you actually say that to get the result you want? Right. So that's what we did on volume 4. So I love that one. Yeah. Instead of, like in volume 1, we show that, but it's set up. Right. And then in volume 4, it's like really at a wedding doing that. And so it's really good. And then we redid, we reshot volume 1 in 2015. Right. Are you planning to go back to the other ones now and redo those? I mean, I'm guessing you probably are in some ways, but no, I won't reshoot, because I don't think we need to. We needed to reshoot number 1 because so much had changed. But what I am doing is we're just adding some things. So like when we reshot number 1, we added some new sections and updated some things. We still use some of the same footage from the original one because it's still good. But then we added a lot of new stuff. We're working on right now a new, I won't give away everything that's on it, but we're working on the transitions DVD. Oh, great. The DVDs go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. And people notice there's 6 is conspicuously missing, and that's because my partner, Mike Anderson, made number 7. And I said, well, I'm going to do 6 transitions. You call that one number 7. but he's way more ambitious than me. He got his done way before mine.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But we're incorporating, there was going to be, 6 was going to be transitions, and then 8 was going to be introductions. And to make a long story short, we're actually combining those into one. So introductions and transitions are going to be part of the same, because I realized that transitions is such a big part of transitions is introducing things. And so introductions, while it's going to cover like wedding party introductions, it's anything you're introducing. And I really had a hard time separating them. So we're going to take these 2, make it into one on everything to do with transitions, and that'll include all the introductions. So we're working on that one. That one should be out by Mobile Beat, which will be it's in March this year.
That's huge. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be interested in the transitions. And transitions are so important, obviously, as everyone knows, and just making sure the flow is smooth. Yeah,
most people don't. Frankly, when I watch DJ videos, most DJs, I don't think know what a transition is.
Yeah.
Much less how to do it. They don't know. And you know, the explanation I always give for it is, you know, as DJs, we understand the transition on music, right? We don't just let a song end and then 5 seconds later start another song, because it would kill the dance floor. It's not because it's better. It's because if we let a song fade to nothing and then started a new song, we would kill the dance floor. Well, the same thing happens on everything. If you finish something and you wait 5 seconds, you kill that moment.
Yeah.
You've got to tighten that up and have transitions that flow. So we have to beat mix our transitions, or somehow mix them. And not every mix of music has to be a beat mix, but every song has to have a transition. So the transition could be, we could let the song die and we speak and then do something else. That can be the transition. But it can also be, we don't say a word, we just layer them together. And the same thing happens with how we do things on the microphone.
Right. Yeah, those are good points. And I think of like transitions, especially with toasts, for example, you know, at the end, and just letting that moment breathe before transitioning into dinner or whatever you're going to be introducing next. I think too often people interrupt those moments, those emotions, when people are giving hugs, and then just go step on that.
Right, but even a moment that you're allowing to breathe still has to have a transition. If you just allow it to breathe and do nothing at all, and if, for example, if they were hugging and people weren't clapping and it was quiet, it would be awkward. It would be weird. So then what do you do? Well, like part of what we're talking about our toasting tips, I usually know what people are going to do before they toast. I mean, I get the information from them. Now it's live, so they may go off script too, right? But I have an idea. But I know what's going to happen. So I've got music that's ready to fill that fits with what they just did.
Yeah, that's clever.
Right. So like I did a 50th anniversary on Saturday, and they gave me a list of 120 songs to play. Okay, 120 songs. And they ranged from great dance stuff to like horrible dance stuff, but it was for use for the whole thing. Well, they had within that several Drifter songs, and when they shared their cake was a replica of their original cake from 1967. And so it was really neat. So when I directed everybody to watch them share the cake, and I said, in 1967, in the summer of love, this was, and they'd already seen a video that showed them, so it was very cool, tied all that together. And this cake was what they shared. And we'll watch again as they create that incredible moment. And then I dropped in the Drifters, This Magic Moment. And there's a couple of different versions of it, but I knew they liked the Drifters, so I did that one. And he's cutting the cake, and as the song comes on, and he's doing this, and he just stops. And he looks over at me, and he's like, and then he came over afterwards, and he literally is hugging me. He goes, "How did you think to come up with that song for that? That was such a great little moment there." Well, I looked at all the stuff that you did, and I did that. But if I hadn't played something, it didn't have to be that song, but if I hadn't played something, that would have turned out to be sort of an awkward moment. It was a very small, there's 40 people at this thing. And there was no start to this event like there are at most, and they had some really odd things we had to work around. So this wasn't going to be a high energy thing, but didn't mean we couldn't have a great transition for it. And I'm Jim Cerrone. That's Jim Cerrone's line, the "Let It Breathe." I just think it's a brilliant line, and whenever possible, let it breathe. But let it breathe means maybe they've got some music, maybe not. Like, we don't always have to do a music drop either.
Yeah.
If they're clapping and cheering, like, that might be just all we want. And I'll wait, and then as that dies, then the music comes in behind it. We do a microphone skills workshop. We're going to want to do, our next one is at Mobile Beat, probably mid-August, probably about 2 weeks from now. We'll announce it and have the signups for that. We'll put it first on the 1% Solution Facebook group. I always give those people first shot at anything. So we'll do that. That will be at Mobile Beat. It'll be about a $300 workshop, and it'll be a chance that's where you get to come in and really work on specific skills in that workshop. And I'm a big fan of all workshops. I mean, if you haven't done it, you should do mine for sure, because mine are the best. But beyond that, Mark Farrell has great workshops. Peter Mary has great workshops. Ron Ruth does a great one on audio amazing love stories. Bill Herman and Jason Jones, the entertainment experience. I mean, there's a lot of great skills that are out there. And I think what everybody should do is at the beginning of every year say, you pick your own number, but I'm going to spend $1,000 this year on training. And maybe that's $300 on a workshop, $500 on going to a convention, and $200 more on some DVDs, or however you want to allocate it. But that should be part of your training budget every year, to say, and just to be a little harsh about it. Frankly, if you spend $1,000 on training and you don't get your money back several times over, it's on you. If you're a $500 DJ, that would be kind of at the bottom. If you're a $500 DJ, you're going to get so much information out of these that you're going to get 10 new jobs that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Right. And
you're going to be able to raise your rates from 500 to 800 overnight. So the $1,000 you get back a million times over. If you're a $2,000 DJ, you're not going to get nearly as much information. You probably are much better already, but you don't have to get very much at $2,000. If you're a $2,000 DJ and you get one idea that gets you one booking that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten, you've now doubled your money.
Right.
So this whole logic of, I see it all the time. I see people saying, I'm saving up my money for the DVDs. Like, I don't mean to be harsh, but I had a guy recently who said, I'm saving up my money. I want to buy the DVD. Wanted to buy one. Which one should I get? And he said, I've been doing this for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought, if you haven't saved $100 in 30 years, maybe selling the equipment's the way to go. I might consider moving on. This might not be the profession for you.
Great. Oh, Lord. Gosh.
But I didn't say that. I used my inside voice. I didn't tell him that. But come on, man. It's $100. It's not. This isn't a $10,000 purchase.
Right.
Our DVDs. If you bought every DVD we had, one at a time, full price, no bundled discounts, you'd spend $700. And I don't think you'd talk to anybody who wouldn't tell you that they've gotten more than $700 worth. And the fact is, you can buy the whole thing, all of it together for $400. So it's just crazy not to do it.
It's a great value.
To reach me, 1% Solution Facebook group is by far. We've got a 1% Facebook page. But I use the group way more often. Go to the 1% Solution Facebook group, and all the contact information is on there. And we have to approve you, but I'm a Facebook addict, so once you ask to be on there, you will almost always get added within hours. We also do you can also go to the other place. You go to 1%solution.com. It's dj1percentsolution.com. dj1percentsolution.com. That's our website for our products. On there, we have our workshops listed, all of our DVDs, but we also do video critique. So people can send in videos where I critique it, and I send it back with really very specific things from watching that. So if you can't make a workshop, That's it's $250. That's what we charge. It's nothing. It is not profitable for me to do that because I generally will spend 5 or 6 hours working on that. So that's not a high profit thing for me, but it's a way to kind of get people started and jump started. So they can do that as well on the DJ1%solution.com.
That's great. Yeah, so if anyone has some raw footage and maybe they recorded it from start to finish, that's a lot of time invested in the 5 to 6 hours to do that and critique that, and a lot of information to get back. So
and on that page, there's also trailers for all of our products. So if anybody wants to see them, you can see video clips from each of them and get an idea of what kind of things we cover and how we cover it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Awesome. Randy, thanks so much for coming on the show. I've been wanting to talk to you for years and years and years about it.
I've been trying to get on here forever, Jim.
It's great. It's great. So I was thrilled when you finally said, yes, how about this day? I'm like, woohoo. So stay tuned next week for episode 24. Thanks again, Randy, and take care, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, Jim.